As Rena Wildwander emerged from the dark, murky pool where she had disappeared earlier, the gnome druid brought with her unsettling news. She had delved into the twisted underbelly of the marshes, where she uncovered remnants of a grim, festering lair, the lair of Ilthane, the Black Dragon. While the Unbearables absorbed her words, their eyes turned skyward. Far in the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of the dragon loomed over Strathaven. Its massive wings cut through the air as it circled the town, dropping what appeared to be enormous boulders onto the terrified populace below. The group knew they had to act. But how? Should they rally the lizard folk to storm Strathaven and confront the dragon head-on? Or should they return to Xenopus's tower, the last place they knew the dragon had roosted? The options weighed heavily on them. Fabin had already sent her familiar, the winged imp Zoof, ahead to Strathaven for reconnaissance. Their first step was clear: gather information. The group agreed that Kelladek, the wizard who had previously driven the dragon away, might be their best hope. However, they decided to first use Zoof to locate Xenopus, the eccentric wizard the Unbearables had freed from captivity during a previous adventure. Through Zoof's telepathic bond, Fabin relayed the news back to the group. Strathaven was in chaos. The dragon's attacks were relentless, with boulders raining down on anyone who dared remain outdoors. The townspeople had abandoned their flimsy wooden homes, cramming themselves into the more robust stone buildings for safety. Fear gripped the streets and the air was thick with panic. Meanwhile, political turmoil unfolded. Gellin Primewater, a wealthy nobleman, had returned to Strathaven with a small army from the south. Under the pretense of protecting the town, he had placed the injured town leader, Ida Oland, under house arrest, claiming she was unfit to defend Strathaven. Primewater had swiftly called for a town council meeting where the fate of the town and the dragon would be decided. Manistrad Copperlocks and her band of dwarves were already preparing for battle, constructing ballistae and sharpening their crossbows. But the dragon, cunning and calculating, stayed well out of their range, striking from the skies with impunity. The Unbearables decided to move cautiously. Timing their approach between the dragon's sorties, they slipped back into Strathaven undetected. The smoldering ruins of the town council hall stood as a grim reminder of the dragon's power, its roof melted away in places by acid. Yet the heroes were welcomed as saviors by the desperate townsfolk. Inside the council chamber, the meeting was just beginning. The battered room was filled with familiar faces. Gellin Primewater, now flanked by a stern figure, General Madrigal, the leader of the southern forces and claiming to be representative of the king. Eleander Fireborn, the captain of the city watch, stood as a calm yet resolute presence. Anders Solmore, the youngest and most impressionable member of the council, lingered nearby, caught between the voices of reason and ambition. Manistrad Copperlocks was there as well, her hands calloused from days of hard labor, her eyes sharp with determination. The town council meeting in Strathaven began with Gellin Primewater taking the floor. His voice was calm but firm, cloaked in the confidence of a man accustomed to steering others. "Let us not act hastily, friends," he urged. "The welfare of the city depends on careful and deliberate leadership." Gellin proposed evacuating the townsfolk to the nearby caves, shelters that the Unbearables had secured months ago. He argued that the population would be safe there, allowing the remaining fighters to focus on dealing with the dragon. Anders Solmore, uncertain and easily swayed, echoed Gellin's sentiment. "I think Gellin has a good point," he said hesitantly. "Stability is key, and cooperation, of course." But Manistrad Copperlocks would have none of it. Her voice rang with dwarven resolve. "There's no time for dithering. We need to strike. The dragon's senses may be sharp in the dark, but it won't be able to soar as high at night. That's our best chance." Eleander Fireborn, ever the voice of diplomacy, sought middle ground. "Perhaps we can do both. Evacuate the people under cover of night while stationing crossbowmen nearby. If the dragon comes close, we can take the fight to it." As the debate raged on, Rena Wildwander grew visibly frustrated. The gnome druid was ready to speak her mind, but the bureaucratic structure of the council blocked her at every turn. General Madrigal, presiding over the meeting, insisted that the heroes had no formal say unless one of the council members ceded their time. For Rena, it was maddening. How can there be this much red tape in a time of crisis? She muttered.
Order, please. It is not your turn to speak, Miss Rena.
I recognize Rena to speak in my stead.
With Anders giving them the right to speak, Rena and the Unbearables rallied their wits. Persuasive arguments, led by Rena and supported by Fabian's sharp tongue, began to sway the council. Eliander and Manistrad showed tentative support, but it was Anders Solmore's vote they needed to secure a majority. Finally, with a mix of heartfelt reasoning and strategic promises, they won him over. The council agreed to a daring plan, a nocturnal attack on the dragon's lair. The idea was simple yet bold. The dwarves would prepare ballista and sneak them to the edge of the lair under cover of darkness. Meanwhile, magical lights and sounds would be conjured on the opposite side of the city to distract the dragon. If all went well, the dragon would be lured into a trap, brought down to the ground and confronted directly. That evening, preparations unfolded with quiet determination. Under the moonless sky, the Unbearables led the dwarves, with Rena's magic helping even the heaviest laden among them move silently. The town's defenders cast their distraction, creating a dazzling display of light and noise far from the true battlefield. As they moved through the marsh toward the dragon's lair, tension hung thick in the air. The faint sound of beating wings echoed in the distance, sending a shiver through the group. At one point, a stray twig snapped underfoot, freezing everyone in place. But the dragon did not come. It circled once and flew off, perhaps fooled by the decoys. Through the night, the group pressed on. The swamp was treacherous, but Winnie's keen eyes spotted herbs that warded off the blood-sucking leeches. Finally, as dawn began to break, they reached the dark, oily pool that marked the entrance to the dragon's lair. Steeling themselves, they plunged into the water. For a moment, panic struck as some became tangled in the thick, clinging water weeds. But with a burst of effort, they broke free and swam toward the hidden tunnel that led to the lair. The air grew heavy and foul as they entered, filled with poisonous gases that stung their lungs. Coughing and wincing, they pressed forward, holding their breath as much as they could. Finally, battered but alive, they emerged into the heart of the lair, a vast, ominous chamber dripping with the dragon's malevolence. The Unbearables entered a chamber filled with shallow pools of acid, the air thick with corrosive fumes that stung their eyes and lungs. The room was a treacherous maze of narrow ledges and slick ridges, forcing the heroes to carefully balance, leap, and help one another with ropes to avoid the bubbling acid below. Their destination lay beyond this dangerous room, a chamber containing a bizarre artifact that Rena had scouted earlier, an ancient relic the dragon would surely protect at all costs. Kor was the first to step into the artifact's chamber. His eyes fell on a massive, asymmetrical structure of dark green-black metal streaked with glowing veins of sickly green energy. Around its base oozed a familiar green slime. The air itself seemed heavy, pressing into their skulls as if the artifact exuded a psychic weight. Winnie's sharp eyes widened in recognition. She had seen this slime before near her village, where monstrous tentacles would erupt from the ground, their blood the same eerie green. As Kor approached the artifact, the pressure in his head grew unbearable, clouding his thoughts. The others felt it too as they edged closer. Xenopus, their eccentric wizard ally, suggested a solution: levitate the artifact to avoid touching it directly. With precision teamwork, ropes, and magic, the group carefully lifted the relic without triggering its dangerous aura. At this juncture, Zuof, left behind with the dwarves on the surface of the pool, reported telepathically to Fabian that he saw the black dragon Ilthane flying in their direction. But as they began to secure it, the ground rumbled. Two hulking Shambling Mounds burst forth, their forms a mass of writhing vines and acidic ooze. A fierce battle erupted. The Unbearables fought with precision and fury. Fabian's eldritch blasts seared into the plant monsters, while Winnie ducked and weaved through the chaos, landing critical sneak attacks. Rena, wielding her flame blade, tried to burn the Shambling Mounds, but struggled to land her strikes, her frustration mounting with each miss. Xenopus unleashed a crackling lightning bolt early in the battle, but the mounds absorbed the energy, their metabolism neutralizing its effects. Kor, wielding the ancestral might of his barbarian forebears, absorbed their punishing blows and retaliated with thunderous strikes. Though the Shambling Mounds dealt heavy damage, the heroes prevailed, their combined efforts reducing the creatures to lifeless heaps. With the artifact in hand, they realized they had no time to press onward to the dragon's lair, as Zuf reported that the dwarves had already opened fire on the approaching dragon. Worse still, the dragon was rapidly closing in. The group swam upward as fast as they could, their lungs burning with the effort. Breaking the surface, they found chaos. The dragon had been struck by 2 ballista bolts, and thick ropes anchored it to the ground. Yet even restrained, it was deadly. The beast had dropped an egg onto one of the dwarf groups, releasing writhing worms that burrowed into their flesh. Twisted by the infection, the dwarves had risen as Sons of Kyuss, mindless undead driven to kill. The battlefield was split. One group of dwarves fought to hold the ballistae steady and readied their crossbows, while the others writhed in agony or fell beneath their undead brethren. Kor charged forward to engage the dragon, wielding the trident given to him as new king of the lizard folk, striking with divine wrath, while Winnie dove beneath the water, resurfacing unexpectedly in different spots to loose arrows into the beast's scaled hide. Rena conjured 2 large bears and transformed into a polar bear herself, having seen it once near the Coldwood, and waded into the battle against the Sons of Kyuss. Her summoned allies bore the brunt of the assault as the undead dwarves fought viciously. Just as the tide began to turn against the heroes, Ikronix unleashed a devastating fireball, engulfing most of the suns in searing flames. Rena finished off the remaining foes, though not without taking heavy wounds that broke her concentration, causing the summoned bears to disappear. Meanwhile, Fabin's eldritch blasts tore into the dragon, while Kor's relentless strikes weakened its resolve. As the creature grew desperate, it broke free of the ropes, unleashing a cone of acidic breath in retaliation. The party's protective potion saved them from the worst of it, but Xenopus was nearly dissolved in the torrent, barely clinging to life. Wavering, Xenopus peppered Ilthane with magic missiles as the dragon prepared to take flight. Kor acted on instinct and grabbed one of the ballista ropes attached to the dragon and held fast, rising into the air as the beast began its ascent. The scene was chaos, a barbarian dangling from the dragon's belly, while dwarves scrambled to reload their weapons. At the last possible moment, the dwarves steadied their crossbows and loosed a final volley. The bolts struck true, finding weak spots in the dragon's armored hide. With a thunderous roar, the beast faltered, its wings folding as it plummeted to the ground. The dragon struck the earth with a resounding crash, its lifeless body shaking the battlefield. Kor landed heavily nearby, battered but triumphant. The Unbearables stood victorious, though battered and bloodied. The dragon's reign of terror was over, but the cost had been great. With Ilthane defeated and its lifeless body sprawled across the battlefield, the Unbearables knew their work was far from over. They descended back into the corrupted depths of the lair, their steps wary as the acidic air gnawed at their senses. Their first stop was the egg chamber. What should have been a place of new beginnings was instead a horrifying sight. The dragon eggs were all corrupted, writhing with the same Kyuss worms that had infected the dwarves. The once hopeful lizard folk eggs had become grotesque breeding grounds for the parasitic creatures. Rena clenched her fists, and a heavy silence fell over the group. They knew this meant more heartbreak for the lizard folk, whose future had already been stolen. Deeper into the lair, they entered the dragon's hoard chamber. The air felt heavier here, charged with the residue of Ilthane's power. Scattered among the treasure were objects of immense value and danger. Ikronix's eyes lit up as he spotted a wand of lightning bolts, resting in a groove carved into the stone. He claimed it immediately, though Fabin lingered near him, clearly eyeing the item with interest. Nearby, a sealed, acid-resistant book caught Fabin's attention. Its cover bore the sigils of ancient forbidden magic, and within it were dark rituals connected to the Kyuss worms. Fabin handed it over to Xenopus for further research. On a rack, they found a black-green cloak that still bore the stench of acid. Despite its weathered appearance, it granted its wearer the ability to walk across water, or even acid, effortlessly, and it provided protection against corrosive damage. Among the golden gemstones glittering across the chamber, they uncovered a collection of potion bottles, their contents shimmering with magical potency. The chamber also contained a more haunting discovery. Suspended from the ceiling by a gnarled root was what appeared to be a corpse, its decaying body scarred with faintly glowing sigils. Burned into its flesh were torn glyphs that radiated faint magical energy. As they approached, the body twitched, barely alive, a grim shadow of what it once was. The figure would require further examination later, but its very presence sent a chill through the group. Lastly, in a cylindrical glass vial sealed with acid-resistant material, they found a coiled parchment containing a tightly written message. Fabine quickly deciphered the text, though the contents made her grimace. Beside it, they discovered a blackened mithril sheet etched with silver runes, carefully rolled and sealed in a scroll tube. Its purpose and meaning were not immediately clear, but Fabine began working to decode its secrets as the group prepared to leave the lair. Weighed down with treasures and grim discoveries alike, the Unbearables left the lair. The knowledge of the Kyuss-infested eggs and the haunting remnants of Ilthane's dark plans loomed over them. Soon, they would have to face the lizard folk with the bitter truth about their corrupted brood.